Yo, what's going on everyone? Hope you're having a happy holidays as I am. Today I'll be making an updated version of every team's season so far, kind of just grading them on how they've done up to this point and their updated point totals. Compared to my predictions I make at the start of each season, I expect these kind of videos to not be as long. Usually with every season there's surprises, disappointments, and everyone else who stays about the same. I'll be taking into account how their rosters are performing, injuries, advanced stats, team stats, and their strength of schedule coming up. Let's get it on. At 8th in the Pacific, I have the San Jose Sharks finishing with 75 points. All their young players, with the exception of Sam Dickinson, are all coming along nicely, and Mike Greer has done a fabulous job assembling the future core. They actually have an above 500 record at home as of now, so they're treating their fans to some entertaining games. I'd argue they've kind of overperformed up to this point, as I don't think many people expected them to be about 500 right now. Even then, I kind of see them keeping this pace up, as they do have one of the easiest remaining schedules. Second last in the Pacific is the Calgary Flames, finishing with 76 points. Now, there's two ways you can look at this. Either A, they avoided what was going to be a season that'll surely cement them in a rebuild, or B, the development of their young guns like Wolf, Perrick have sort of fizzled out, showing that last season was indeed an overperformance. I think the Flames should embrace the rebuild within the next few seasons and just accept the fact that this season isn't it, especially when you see that they have this toughest schedule here on out. 6th in the Pacific are the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know what it is with this team, but it really is difficult to pinpoint where they'll be at any given moment. They just traded away possibly their best defenseman ever in Quinn Hughes to the Minnesota Wild, and the Canucks somehow went on a 4-game winning streak right after. Boyum, Rossi, and Ogren is by no means a bad return, but they just aren't going to have that wow factor Hughes provided. I did say at the beginning of the season that Vancouver is very prone to dysfunction, and maybe now that this whole fiasco is put to bed, they can just focus on hockey the rest of the way. Looking at you, EP40, 5th place in the miserable middle is the Seattle Kraken. If there's one team's roster that's filled with middle pairings, mid all around, it's Seattle. Like, everything's kind of just meh, not terrible, but it's been symbolic of how the Kraken have been these past few seasons. Not bad enough to tank, but not good enough to make the playoffs. It's this dreaded middle that they seem to be stuck in. To this day, I don't know why Lane Lambert is only playing Shane Wright 14 minutes a night, expecting him to do much at all. And he's actually been doing quite decently considering what he's been given. Getting to the top half is the Anaheim Ducks with 92 points, finishing 4th in the Pacific, just outside of a playoff spot. That hot streak closer to the start of the season seems to have cooled off, but there's no denying the immense amount of offensive firepower they'll have for the future. It's just that their play inside their own blue line that's holding them back the most. Seeing how this season has gone thus far, I see them fighting it out till the bitter end, but miss the playoffs by a small margin. Joel Quenneville has done wonders for this young core, and I'm intrigued to see what they have in store for the next few seasons. Falling down is the LA Kings at 3rd in the Pacific with just 95 points. I massively overlooked their underwhelming offense at the start of the season. They just can't seem to score much, as their measly 91 goals literally has them second last in the league in that category. I know it's very much to do with the system, but that's something that's not going to get them very far in the playoffs, which is what they've been yearning for years past, much less the Oilers. LA is playing the kind of system I envisioned they'll play at the start of the season, but inevitable errors are just going to be too costly for a team that mostly wins games by scores like 1-0, 2-1, and 3-1. Coming oh so close to winning the division for the first time are the Edmonton Oilers with 108 points. It's actually kind of baffling how they've been in the McDavid contending window for over half a decade now and haven't won the division once. This is also how they keep getting LA in round 1. They've been super close the last 2 seasons, and maybe winning them the Pacific will be the perfect environment for them to get Canada's first cup in over 3 decades. As long as they can keep up their freakishly good power play numbers, I guess. Staying atop of the Pacific are the 108-point Vegas Golden Knights. Their big offseason acquisition of Mitch Marner has not skipped a beat. However, even though there's no 3-on-3 in the playoffs, they might want to work on that a bit, as they already lost 10 points from that phase of the game. For a team as skilled and intimidating as the Knights are, I really expected them to shine in situations such as overtime, but instead their extra time losses have mounted up so much to the point that they're getting enough points to be first in the Pacific, but still won less than half their games. Finishing not only last in the Central, but the league are the Chicago Blackhawks with just 70 points. Some Hawks fans may be disappointed about the step back seeing the placement has dropped, but I think it's more important they get someone like Gavin McKenna to be Bedard's sidekick. Whereas San Jose has overloaded on offense, Chicago has on defense, and they benefit more from getting McKenna. For the first 20 games or so, Chicago didn't look like they were going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes, but recently they've fallen down hard. Very likely it could have been them getting lucky, but as of now, they have the worst expected goals percentage in the league. Regardless though, they'll improve as a team, just not in the standing placements. 7th in the Central are the Nashville Predators, putting up 77 points. Whatever hopes of them bouncing back swiftly has been crushed, as it's become evident the team is just too old with too little young players not quite being ready. To this day, I'm still trying to figure out how Barry Trotz bombed as a GM but is apparently a great coach. Nashville is also having the same troubling tale as last season, where they're rarely getting the bounces as they have a negative 16 goal differential above expected. What's especially brutal is Marchessault, who is now a shell of his former self, and as the rest of the old guard ages, this trend will only worsen. At 6th is the Blues with 87 points. I'm still kind of ready for the Blues to make a vicious rally in the second half of the season and make the playoffs. Regardless, this roster is too good for where they are right now. Jordan Binnington, the projected star for Canada, I don't know what's happened with him. He's at the bottom of the league and expected goals saved above average. And a big reason for why the Blues just can't seem to keep the puck out of the net. They also have the league's worst goal differential from just how when they get down, they seem to pack it in, and next thing you know, it's 7-1. Very unlike their reputation of being able to stick with it through adversity and come back stronger. The troubling trend is that their futures in Snuggerud, Dvorsky, Mailloux aren't doing particularly well either. Taking the second wildcard spot, 5th in the division, with 92 points is the Utah Mammoth. They have been a bit underwhelming this season, and it sparked some rumors of Andre Tourigny being fired. I think those can sit for a while as there's still half the season to be played, and their placing in the moment is still manageable. Tourigny stuck through some really tough times going back to their Arizona days, and it's got them to where they are now. Utah's on-ice play isn't actually that bad either, as they have been controlling the majority of play and never shy away from stiff competition. This can be seen from how they've played the Avalanche hard every time. I trust that they'll figure this out and deliver the city's first playoff appearance in the NHL. The first team I've underestimated in this video is the Minnesota Wild, who will snatch the first wildcard spot with 103 points, sitting 4th in the Central. I really didn't expect them to scoop up Quinn Hughes, who has transitioned nicely from the Canucks, as they weren't even a whisper. Initially, I thought they poured way too much money for Kaprizov, leaving too little money for other players. However, those recent stretches have sprung them firmly into a playoff spot. Wallstedt is even better than advertised, and it gives the Wild 2 solid goalies. Hopefully this new core of Kaprizov, Hughes, Boldy, Eriksson, Faber, and that dynamic duo in net will bring home Minnesota's first Stanley Cup, because boy have they been overdue. Possibly the hottest take of this video are the Winnipeg Jets, finishing with 104 points, 3rd in the Central. They've declined a lot in the standings when they didn't have Hellebuck at the helm, but I think this roster is just too good to be this low in the standings. Scott Arniel proved last season that he can get the most out of the team, and I trust him to recover the season for the Jets. That'll also be done through the various depth pieces, most notably Jonathan Taves finding his footing in the NHL again. Cole Perfetti and Neil Pionk I'll also be expecting big bounce backs from in the second half of the season as well. For second in the Central, we go all the way south to Dallas, where the Stars will be finishing with 118 points. Every part of this roster taken into account, they're just as close as you can get to a cup contender as possible. Just some key pieces in Duchesne and Harley need to pick up the slack a bit, and they'll be an unstoppable force. I've also been preaching they need to balance out the blue lines on the left and right side, but they've thrived with the left being more dynamic and offensive minded, and the right playing stay-at-home defense. Oh yeah, and Tyler Seguin is on the IR again for the rest of the regular season, as if anyone saw that coming. The crazier part is that 118 points is only second in the super stacked division. This monster of a team will validate my last statement. The Colorado Avalanche will be far above the rest of the NHL with 132 points. With their captain back and the disappointments of the years after 2022, they've come out for vengeance. Listen up here, because this is what they've done this season thus far. They're yet to lose in regulation at home. They only lost 2 regulation games overall so far. They've lapped last year's Blackhawks and Sharks. Every game, they score on average 2 more goals than their opponent. They have an expected goals for percentage of almost 60%. They haven't even used their starter for half their games. They've eclipsed the 2023 Bruins at this point in their respective seasons. All this while having a power play only operating at 27th in the league. Is there more I need to say? We'll see come playoff time if they can break the President's Trophy curse. Unlike all the other winners of said trophy, they've had a championship with mostly still the same core, so those concerns can be put to rest right now. There's also the potential parallel of Raymond Borgsark happening with Brent Burns too this season, and boy would that be a treat. Last in the Metro are the Penguins with 72 points. Kind of like Chicago, they showed promise early in the season, and that they might not need to do a full teardown rebuild and go for Gavin McKenna, but reality has really slapped them hard. Their prospect pool has been much better than 5 seasons ago, but the only one that's delivered so far is Ben Kindle. McGroarty, Koivunen, Pickering, and Brunicky haven't been cutting it so far. I think despite the good start, it's going to be a painful season as the schedule will only get tougher for them here, as teams curb stomp the Pens in the waning days of the regular season, battling out for playoff seeding. Unlike the Pens, one team I did think dodged the dreaded rebuild is the Islanders, faltering in March and finishing with 85 points, good enough for 7th in the Metro. While they do have the easiest schedule, the easiest teams they still have games against are in the West, making those points a bit less crucial for them in the playoff race. Matthew Schaefer's ascent to being a vital part of the Islanders' defensive core is especially impressive when you take into account that defensemen typically take longer to mature than forwards. This even further confirms how much Matthew Darche looked out in last season's draft. On the topic of GM, Darche has been great so far encouraging the youth movement towards the future, while veterans like Horvat, Barzal, and Pollock are still top-line contributors, making them optimal role models for the next generation in Schaefer, Ritchie, Eklund, and Aitchison to learn from. 6th in the Central will be the Columbus Blue Jackets with 86 points. I really did want them to do it for Johnny, but they've fallen off so hard recently, and it doesn't leave me brimming with confidence. It's showing now how much they benefited from their high shooting percentage last season, as we've seen many other forwards regress to a certain degree, most notably Marchenko, Fantilli, Monahan, Delvaux, Belouz, and worst of all, Ken Johnson has been in a massive slump. Although they are in about the same position as last season at this time, their execution has been way worse, leading to a shooting percentage being the polar opposite of last season. The forwards will have to put together some stretches to get the goal scoring where it needs to be again if they want to get back in the hunt. 5th in the Metro are the Philadelphia Flyers, taking more strides, ending up with 87 points. The Trevor Zegras trade has worked wonders for both sides, as he needed that change of scenery, and it was also one less distraction for the Ducks. Also, their goaltending has gotten rid of the ever so frustrating Fedotov and has been quietly good this season. Combining with the new voice behind the bench and Rick Tocchet, you have a team firing on all cylinders, giving the wildcards a run for their money. I definitely thought the Flyers would benefit from a playstyle that wasn't overly conservative, but nobody saw them being second in their division at this point in the season. Maybe this is just 23-24 all over again, where they collapsed right at the death, but fans can't complain just yet because it's been an excellent season so far. Because they have to play home games as well, the Rangers are only 4th with 94 points. If they played every game on the road, they'd be the Eastern Colorado Avalanche. The Rangers are just trolling their fans at this point, playing the way they are at home and bringing it out on the road. If they do manage to barely sneak in, it might just be a recipe for success because that'll just give them more games on the road, which has certainly been their bread and butter. They also finally did a half-decent job with a forward prospect in Noah Laba. The home record has also begun to level itself out recently and is a step in the right direction at convincing fans to buy tickets again. Grabbing 3rd in the Metro is the New Jersey Devils, once again with an underwhelming point total of 93. This team has great potential to be a Stanley Cup champion, however, they're too injury prone, and when key players get injured, they just have little answers. It's seen in their inability to adjust to their play style when someone like Jack Hughes goes down. Jacob Markstrom is also fading fast as Father Time catches up to him. They shouldn't just be making the playoffs and being pushovers once they get there. This creates a trap of complacency that stifles a team's hunger for the cup. Fitzgerald better act sooner rather than later to shore up the roster depth with more physicality and grit for the situations the Devils have found themselves in. At 2nd place in the Metro is Carolina with 104 points. The scoring is very nicely dispersed among forwards and defensemen, indicating that both the stars and depth pieces are showing up. Goaltending still remains the biggest question, as Anderson's many injuries seems to have him deteriorating fast. However, they did find a potential replacement in Brandon Bussey. They've been doing great without Jacob Slavin as well, and I'm excited to see what this team will do come playoff time as long as they avoid Florida. The Canes' identity of just throwing pucks on net has them dominating play, and they haven't skipped a beat. Keeping the crown of the Metro, the Washington Capitals will have 108 points. They did overperform a bit last season, however it most certainly wasn't a fluke. Young pieces like Protas, McMichael, and Leonard are making waves in their development and look to be part of the future forward core as Ovechkin and Wilson age out. Logan Thompson has also had a phenomenal first half of the season, and I'm surprised he hasn't got more consideration for Team Canada at the Olympics. Is Ovi going to go for 1,000 goals and another cup? I'm sure he's got that fire in him, and you can bet on the Caps to follow through. 8th place from the Atlantic are the Boston Bruins with 81 points. They were turning some heads for quite a bit there, and you can see the buy-in to Marco Sturm's philosophies were there. I simply just can't overlook the back-to-back 6-2 home losses to division rivals heading into the break though. Advanced stats also show that their downfall was imminent, considering how many games Swayman stole. This team isn't just skilled whatsoever, and down the stretch, when things heat up, teams will try harder, and that's when the skill will take over. I certainly thought they were going to be better than last season, but it wasn't going to be much considering they traded Marchand for scraps and the roster just got worse overall. 7th place are the Ottawa Senators with 84 points. I will say the skaters have exceeded my expectations as the offensive output has come through. Their 5-on-5 offense, which was their worst analytical stat last season, has improved as well, but now it's the goaltending that's holding them back. Linus Ullmark and Larry Meriläinen combined for almost 20 more goals allowed than they should have, and it leaked them quite a bit of points. Who knows for how long the offense can keep punching above their weight. Steve Staios didn't really bother to improve the offense either last season, so I think it's just a matter of time before this team spirals out of the playoff race. Finishing 6th in the Atlantic with 88 points are the Buffalo Sabres. For the gazillionth time, I really hope I'm wrong because boy have their fans had it rough, missing the playoffs for a decade and a half now. Perhaps that hot streak can induce enough confidence in them to finally break that playoff drought, but at this point it's really just an I believe it when I see it. In the past few years, they've also been on hot streaks of 5+ game winning streaks, only to tack another playoff miss onto their already lengthy drought. Right now though, I do like how their roster is doing, certainly a bit better than I envisioned at the start of the season. Once again though, who's to say they're not just going to slip up into their bad habits again? I guess time will tell. Hurting almost as much, I see the Red Wings finishing with 88 points at 5th in the Atlantic. I like the offense, and the defense is better as well. However, their big move landing John Gibson just hasn't panned out. He's shown some life as of late, but when a goalie is being paid $6.4 million, he should be a net positive towards your chances at victory. Those points dropped at the beginning of the season because of his terrible performances can surely come back to bite them later on. Although the Wings are first in the division right now, I struggle to ignore the negative goal differential. It can suggest that they keep winning nail-biters, and they shouldn't keep counting on those kind of games to keep swinging in their favor. Claiming the second wildcard spot for the second year in a row with 92 points this time is the Montreal Canadiens. The roster has seen much improvement, adding Noah Dobson to the blue line along with Dano, Bolduc, and internal growth from the young core. Sam Montembeault, however, hasn't been having a good year, but Jacob Fowler has come in to save the crease, and it's kept the Habs atop their division. I can't ignore that last season their placement in the standings was from playing in the weaker conference and the backstopping of Montembeault stealing them many games. I definitely don't think they were going to regress, but more so just make the dance more comfortable this time. 3rd in the Atlantic, I have the Florida Panthers with 98 points. I do think they'll recover having to deal with life without Tkachuk and Barkov, and they've played better as of late. Most of that was likely from the burnout of going to the finals 3 seasons in a row, and with Tkachuk coming back soon, they should bounce back and at least make the playoffs. I do think the burnout is still cumulative and might leak into their playoffs, but who knows. Maybe they think long term and let Colorado have the cup this year and prevent their players from eating up so much wear and tear that it becomes permanent. Number 2 in the Atlantic are the Toronto Maple Leafs with 103 points. Like the Panthers, I think they just needed that adjustment period where they had to do some trial and error now that Marner's gone. Both Stolarz and Woll were out for almost half the season, and they were left with their third string for a bit there. Getting Stolarz back soon should send a jolt through the lineup and knock some sense into them. This roster is just too good to be playing like this, and with Craig Berube at the helm, they're just a couple of hot streaks away from getting above the playoff line. The climb may be steep, however nobody has really doubted this core's performance in the regular season. It's just that when they get to the postseason, they have some figuring out to do. Claiming the Atlantic are the Tampa Bay Lightning with 108 points. Apart from Braden Point, this roster should see smooth sailing to the playoffs after that relatively slow start to the season. We're seeing more glimpses of the team from COVID times too, dominating their opponents and all components of the roster pulling their weight. I suspect Breezeball will add some pieces near the deadline too to be able to compete with teams like Florida, who have surpassed them in recent seasons. With the core still having some good years left in the tank, expect them to come back with vengeance after back-to-back years of getting smacked around by their rivals. And there you have it. These are my Christmas break predictions for how the regular season will shape out to be. There's still half the season to go, so much can change in between, but the first half has given me a good idea of how teams are measuring up. Are they meeting expectations? Are they surprising? Are they disappointing? Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day.